The 10 interesting facts about Our Lady of Guadalupe. Number 10. Mass pilgrimage. The veneration of Our Lady of Guadalupe is an unprecedented religious, cultural, and social phenomenon, which every year attracts millions of people to the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe, located in the north of Mexico City. The number of faithful who come to this sanctuary far exceeds that of most pilgrimage centers in the world, being comparable only to St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. This influx reaches its peak on December 12th, the day the Church commemorates the last appearance of the Virgin to St. Juan Diego in 1531. During this date, the avenues and streets that lead to the Via de Guadalupe become authentic human rivers. Devotees carrying banners, families with children in their arms, the elderly, young people, groups of dancers in traditional costumes, cyclists who travel for miles, and even people who advance on their knees as a sign of sacrifice and gratitude. But the massive attendance is not limited to this specific festivity. Throughout the year, the Basilica receives a constant stream of visitors. Some come with a simple prayer, others with thanksgiving for a favor granted, while others come with promises that last for years. This dynamic is based on the deep devotion that the Virgin of Guadalupe inspires among the faithful, who see in her a loving, protective mother, close to the daily needs of people. The expression of faith, which is reflected in the capacity of the sanctuary to summon such diverse crowds, also highlights the intersection between popular religiosity and national identity. In addition, this massive pilgrimage has economic, tourist, and social impacts. Hotels, local businesses, and street vendors prepare to receive the torrent of visitors. The capital authorities organize security and health operations. The media cover the events with sustained attention. In this way, the devotional phenomenon transcends ecclesiastical borders to influence the life of the city and the country, revalidating the central role that the Virgin of Guadalupe plays in the collective imagination of Mexico and of large Latin American communities. Number 9. Influence on independence. The figure of the Virgin of Guadalupe had a crucial symbolic relevance during the beginning of the fight for the independence of Mexico at the beginning of the 19th century. When Father Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla raised the banner of the Virgin of Guadalupe in the early morning of September 16, 1810, he was not only seeking divine blessing for his cause, but he was appealing directly to the heart of the New Spain people. This Marian image, deeply rooted in mestizo spirituality, functioned as a powerful symbol of unity, capable of uniting indigenous people, mestizos, Creoles, and even some peninsulars dissatisfied with the colonial system. The decision to raise the Guadalupe image was not accidental. For the great masses of the people, especially the humblest sectors, the Virgin represented closeness and protection. Since the 16th century, the Morenita del Tepeyac had become a bridge between the pre-Hispanic indigenous worldview and the recently established Catholicism, projecting the idea of a common mother to all the inhabitants of the territory. This shared belonging offered a powerful symbolic language, more eloquent than any political discourse, because it reminded all strata of society that there was an identity factor that united them beyond their differences. The influence of Guadalupe was not limited to the first stage of the independence movement. As the war progressed, different insurgent leaders relied on devotion to the Virgin, using her image on flags, banners, and proclamations to maintain the morale and conviction of the people. After the consummation of independence in 1821, the figure of Guadalupe continued to permeate the public and spiritual life of the new nation. It was consolidated as a national symbol, reaffirming the role of faith and cultural identity in the construction of the Mexican state, unifying a diverse society under the protective mantle of the Dark Virgin. Number 8. Patroness of America. The significance of the Virgin of Guadalupe far exceeds Mexican territory. Her maternal message, her mestizo appearance, and the symbolic richness of her image have positioned her as a Marian icon of continental scope. The official proclamation made by Pope John Paul II in 1999, declaring her Patron of America, formalized a feeling shared by a multitude of Catholic communities throughout the hemisphere. From Alaska to Patagonia, and with special roots in the Caribbean and Latin America, the devotion to Guadalupe has served as a spiritual link between peoples with diverse histories, languages, and cultures. One of the most notable aspects of her continental patronage is the way in which she has accompanied migrant communities. Both Mexicans in the United States and other Latin American diasporas invoke her protection in environments far from their places of origin. The Morenita del Tepeyac thus acts as a symbol of identity and consolation for those who, separated from their families and customs, find in her a familiar maternal figure. This sense of closeness crosses political and geographical borders, and is reflected in Guadalupe celebrations in parishes in Chicago, Los Angeles, or Houston, as well as in churches in Canada, Central America, and South America. Furthermore, the pontifical distinction of Patroness of America highlights the capacity of the Virgin of Guadalupe to articulate a message of hope and unity in the face of social tensions, inequality, and conflicts that often characterize the reality of the continent. By uniting popular worship, colonial history, the struggle for independence, and the daily experience of faith, Guadalupe stands as a spiritual beacon around which the desires and beliefs of millions of people converge. Her figure invites solidarity, intercultural understanding, and the construction of a common identity marked by faith and fraternity. Number 7. Indigenous symbols. The image of the Virgin of Guadalupe is an extraordinary example of religious and cultural syncretism. It combines elements of European Christian art, brought by Franciscan missionaries and later by other orders, with symbols from the pre-Hispanic world deeply rooted in the indigenous imagination. Her blue-green cloak, her pink tunic, the arrangement of the stars and the sun rays that surround her evoke the cosmic order venerated by the ancient Mesoamerican peoples, for whom the sky, the sun, the moon, and nature were sacred manifestations of divinity. The appearance on the Tepeyac Hill, a place associated with the cult of the goddess Tonantzin, reinforced the idea that this new divine face did not come to annihilate ancestral meanings, but to reconfigure them. The Virgin standing on the moon, surrounded by light, with her hands together in an attitude of prayer, was interpreted by the indigenous people as a benevolent celestial presence, in tune with their ancient beliefs. Thus, its acceptance was not forced, but facilitated by the familiarity of these symbols that spoke the same iconographic language. This delicate balance between two cultural worlds was fundamental to the rapid spread of the Guadalupe cult. While the conquering church brought the new faith, the image of Guadalupe came to build bridges, to dialogue with the original sacredness, becoming an effective tool of evangelization that did not deny, but rather subsumed pre-Hispanic spirituality. Today, this syncretic aspect continues to be studied by historians, anthropologists, and theologians, who see in the Guadalupe image an exceptional testimony of indigenous cultural resilience and of the way in which Catholicism found a unique way to take root in the New World. Number 6. Unknown pigments. The tilma of Juan Diego, a humble ayate woven from maguey fibers, is one of the greatest enigmas of religious art. Over the centuries, numerous scientific examinations have attempted to determine the origin of the pigments that shape the image of the Virgin of Guadalupe. Surprisingly, such efforts have not yielded conclusive results. no mineral, vegetable, or animal substances common to the period have been detected. In addition, the absence of visible brushstrokes and the lack of a preparatory layer underline the exceptional nature of the technique, or rather, the apparent absence of one. This singularity is even more astonishing when one considers the time that has passed. The tilma is almost 5 centuries old, and yet the image retains its freshness, clarity, and luminosity. The canvas, which should have disintegrated within a few decades under environmental conditions and exposure to candles, incense, and devotional hands, remains in a state of preservation that is inexplicable by the usual parameters of artistic restoration. Scientists from different countries and times have applied infrared rays, spectrum analysis, microscopic studies, and chemical tests, without arriving at a satisfactory explanation. This not only enhances the miraculous dimension of the image, but also stimulates scientific and cultural curiosity. The mystery of the unknown pigments fuels popular devotion, but also academic interest. For the faithful, this incorruptibility is tangible proof of divine intervention. For researchers, a challenge that invites new hypotheses and studies with more advanced technologies. The Guadalupe image, thus, is situated halfway between the religious and the scientific, being at the same time an object of veneration and a source of intellectual perplexity. Number 5. Constellations on the mantle. Among the multiple symbolic readings of the Guadalupe image, one of the most fascinating is the astronomical interpretation of the Virgin's stellar mantle. Various researchers have suggested that the arrangement of the stars is not arbitrary, but could correspond to constellations visible in the sky of the Valley of Mexico around the time of the apparitions, in December 1531. The idea that the mantle reflects the firmament turns the Virgin into a cosmic canvas, intertwining the divine presence with the celestial order. This correlation with the night sky not only contributes to the aura of mystery surrounding the image, but also establishes a connection with pre-Hispanic societies, for whom the observation of the stars was not only scientific, but deeply religious. The sky marked the seasons, guided the harvests, and regulated sacred festivals. If the Virgin carries a star map on her mantle, she would be, in a certain way, embracing the indigenous worldview, aligning herself with the way in which these cultures interpreted the universal order. Although some experts question this astronomical interpretation, arguing that the stellar arrangement may be a coincidence or a later symbolic construction, the theory has taken root in the popular imagination. For many believers, thinking that the constellations on the cloak refer to the real sky makes the idea that the Virgin acts as a mediator between the cosmos and humanity more palpable. The perception of an astral message reinforces the superhuman character of the image and enriches the web of meanings that the cloak has aroused over the centuries. Number 4. Resistance to damage. The durability of the tilma that bears the image of the Virgin of Guadalupe is a fact that puzzles historians, scientists, and restorers alike. The maguey cloth, an extremely fragile fabric, should have perished centuries ago under the action of time, humidity, pollution, candle smoke, and human manipulation. However, not only does it remain intact, but the image shines with a vividness that defies the known laws of textile and pigment conservation. One of the most mentioned events is the bomb that exploded in 1921 in front of the main altar of the basilica. The explosion destroyed nearby objects, twisted a heavy metal crucifix, and caused damage to the structure, but the glass that protected the tilma of much lower quality than the current armored glass and the image itself remained unscathed. Other incidents, such as the accidental spillage of acids or proximity to lit candles, have also failed to affect the canvas. These stories have been passed down with wonder through the generations, reinforcing the popular belief that the tilma is under divine custody that prevents any deterioration. For the faithful devotee, this inexplicable resistance is an unmistakable sign of the sacred. The tilma is not a common cloth, but a living relic that expresses the intervention of the Virgin in the history of Mexico. For researchers, however, it constitutes a constant challenge: how to scientifically explain something that seems to escape the norms of nature. Thus, resistance to material damage becomes one of the most eloquent features of the miraculous and exceptional character of the Guadalupe image. Number 3. Body temperature. Among the many peculiarities attributed to the tilma is the claim that it maintains a constant temperature equivalent to that of the human body, approximately 36.6 degrees Celsius, regardless of the environmental conditions that surround it. Although this fact has been repeated by some scholars and devotees, and sometimes measured with thermometers and specialized devices, the scientific evidence has not been consolidated into an absolute consensus. Nevertheless, the mere consideration of this characteristic has generated particular interest and countless symbolic interpretations. For the believer, the fact that the image presents a live temperature is a sign of the maternal and close presence of the Virgin. The Morenita del Tepeyac would not simply be an inert effigy, but a figure that, in some way, maintains a vital bond with those who contemplate her. This temperature could be understood as a symbol of her warm and protective love, the embodiment of the comfort and empathy that the Virgin extends to all those who invoke her in times of need. On the other hand, from a rational perspective, it is difficult to accept this attribution without reservation. Factors such as lighting, ambient temperature, the influx of visitors, and the conditions of the sanctuary could influence specific measurements. Even so, the myth surrounding the body temperature of the tilma has become part of the vast collection of testimonies, legends, and traditions that keep the mystery of Guadalupe alive. This duality between scientific skepticism and devotional credulity enriches the dialogue between faith and reason, a relationship always present in the history of the cult of the Virgin of Guadalupe. Number 2. The eyes of the Virgin. The enigmatic depth of the image reaches its maximum subtlety in the eyes of the Virgin of Guadalupe. Various analyses with optical instruments, high-resolution photographs, and even ophthalmological observations carried out by professional doctors have detected the presence of tiny figures reflected in the corneas. Among them, some specialists claim to distinguish the silhouette of a man with indigenous features and other figures that could represent witnesses of the moment when Juan Diego unfolded his cloak before Bishop Zumarraga, showing the miraculous image for the first time. This microscene in the eyes, so tiny that it is far from the normal possibilities of the pictorial technique of the 16th century, is a challenge to human understanding. How could microscopic characters have been painted with such detail and precision at a time when high-power optical instruments did not exist? In addition, the arrangement of the images in the eyes obeys the laws of human optics, as if it were the real reflection that a witness would have in his pupil when observing a scene. This reinforces the idea that the image of Guadalupe is not the product of human hand, but of a supernatural event. Reflection on these findings has transcended the devotional sphere to generate interest in lay researchers and believers alike. Some see in them incontrovertible proof of the miracle. Others consider that they are subjective interpretations, a projection of popular fervor on ambiguous details. Whatever the position, the mere existence of this debate underlines the symbolic and technical complexity of the image. The eyes of the Virgin of Guadalupe, like windows to a founding moment, invite us to contemplate not only the historical event, but the intimate relationship between faith, art, and mystery. Number 1. The image on the tilma of San Juan Diego. The traditional narrative of the apparitions of the Virgin of Guadalupe to Juan Diego Cuauhtlatótzin in December 1531 constitutes the historical and spiritual core of the Guadalupe cult. According to the story, the Virgin Mary appeared before the native on Tepeyac Hill, a site with deep pre-Hispanic religious significance. She spoke to him in his language, Nahuatl, and asked him to go to Bishop Juan de Zumarraga to request the construction of a temple in her honor. After several comings and goings, and in the face of the bishop's initial disbelief, the Virgin ordered Juan Diego to gather roses on the top of the hill. It was winter, an unusual time to find flowers. However, he found them and kept them in his tilma. When Juan Diego unfolded the ayate before Zumarraga, the roses fell to the ground and, at that precise moment, the image of the Virgin was imprinted on the tilma. This was the founding miracle, the moment when Tepeyac became the spiritual heart of New Spain and, later, of the religious identity of independent Mexico. The image not only impressed the bishop and the faithful who witnessed the miracle, but over time it became a point of reference for the emergence of a devotion that transcended eras, borders, and cultures. The story of the appearance and the miracle of the tilma is documented in sources such as the Nican Mapahua, a Nahuatl text from the 17th century that recounts in detail the experience of Juan Diego and the response of the colonial world to the mestizo Virgin. Throughout the centuries, poets, chroniclers, historians, artists, and theologians have reflected on the meaning of this founding event. Thanks to the Virgin of Guadalupe, Tepeyac ceased to be just another geographical space to become the epicenter of a mestizo spirituality, a bridge between the pre-Hispanic and Christian worlds, and a living symbol of identity, unity, and hope for an entire nation and, over time, for the American continent. Thus, the image on the tilma is not only a sacred object, but a transcendental milestone that continues to inspire the faith, culture, and memory of countless generations. Thank you for watching our video. Subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Give it a like, comment your thoughts, and share this video with your friends and family.